Hey, I'm Ange.
And I'm Beck.
And we are the Gold Diggers, because we believe there's gold found in everyone.
Everyone is unique, interesting and exciting with a great story to share.
And we aim to find it.
The question is, can we rise to the challenge and strike gold? Stay tuned to find out as we chat to today's mystery guest.
Honey, you're my sugar.
So this is how it works. One of us knows our mystery guest and the other doesn't. And today, it's Beck's turn to discover the gold in our special guest, Jacqui Atique. Did I pronounce that right?
It can be pronounced many ways. So it's Atique if you want to say it in Portuguese.
Well, that kind of so fitting, a cheeky.
Yeah, I know.
I love that.
And Atique if you want to say it in the Aussie way.
Okay.
How was that one?
Atique.
Atique.
Yeah, so it's like antique without the N.
And the Portuguese way is?
Atique.
Atique.
I like that way. I think we'll go with a cheeky because Jacqui is a cheeky.
Jackie's a cheeky Jacqui. So when they called your name out at school, did they say the last name first and then the first name?
No, because that's my married. It's my married name.
But that would be great.
Yeah. Everyone stumbles on it. They think it looks easy, but in fact, it's actually not.
Yeah.
So Jacqui's 48, and in fact, we're only like 3 days apart.
Two,
aren't
I think.
we?
You're
Was
19?
20.
Oh, I'm
You're
17, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I got it right. 3 days apart in age. And Jacqui has 4 kids, born in Tasmania, and I'm going to give you something extra.
Okay.
Recently won an award.
Wow.
So there you go.
Okay, I've got a lot to work with.
You have.
That's great.
Now, there's a thing between us, right, that we were always competing on who can deliver the best first question. So the pressures are.
Yes, I'm going to have to think. Okay.
Right. Off you go. And I've given you a bit extra, so I'm being kind.
Okay.
So welcome, Jacqui.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your award, because it was very recently
It was.
that you won that. And in fact, I was at the ceremony where you won that award.
I didn't know that until it was too late to give you a hug. So
I know.
I'm sorry, I didn't get to do that.
And the award is the Sunshine Coast Businesswomen's.
Sustainable Businesswoman of the Year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it was an honour.
Yes. And how many were you up against?
Well, the process for Sustainable Businesswoman of the Year is a little different because it's actually everyone who applies, and then they pull out the Outstanding Businesswoman of the Year, and then they pull out the Sustainable Businesswoman of the Year, and then they do all the other categories. So I think the finalists, there were about 7 of us, 6 or 7 of us that were finalists on the night. So
and you are the CEO of ECOllaboration, which is a sustainable charity. Is it charitable?
Yeah, we are a charity, not for profit.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're operating up throughout the whole of South East Queensland.
Correct.
Because that really is your passion, isn't it?
It
Sustainability, the environment and education around that.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole educating the next generation to make sure that they have a planet to care and protect and live on is pretty important, I reckon.
Very important.
Yeah.
And it's a hot potato right now, isn't it? It is something that we're getting more attention to, but even more attention is really needed, isn't it?
Absolutely. I don't think we can ever do enough in that space. And it's not just about educating kids, it's about educating young adults and, of course, adults as well. So our citizen science programs really focus on all walks of life to make sure we can get the message across to as many people as possible.
Wonderful. So I'm looking forward to digging into that. But I know this just because we are personal friends, that actually one of the biggest challenges you went through in life is the fact that you lost your first child at 3 weeks old.
Yes. That was definitely changed me as a person and very much as a mother to 3 other healthy young children now, some growing adults, as you know.
Yeah.
But, definitely probably the most hardest path that I've had to walk in my life.
Yeah.
But in saying that, those things have formed who I am now, and I absolutely would not be sitting here with you now if I hadn't had those experiences.
Yeah, well, we are a subject of our experiences, aren't we?
Absolutely.
And your eldest son now, Ethan, is
Yes.
actually good friends with my son. And this is how we know each other personally.
For a long time.
Probably 12. It must be 12 years.
We moved here in 2011 and Ethan and Dara have been friends pretty much since day one, I think. So,
Yes, we have so many
12, 13
similarities.
years.
Our birthdays are the same. We moved here from overseas in
Yes.
2011.
Yeah.
Our eldest sons, or for me, my only son.
We lived in the same town for a short period of suburb for a short period of time, and lots of
similarities.
Yeah.
So to me, Jacqui, there's so much gold in you, but what I really love about you is how you put action to the things that you're passionate about, that to bring lasting change. And I wrote here that you are led by your convictions. Your passions become actions, and you pursue what you value. That's actually really remarkable, because a lot of people are passionate about things but don't always put that into action, and the fact that you do will bring lasting change to our environment.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely to say. But yeah, definitely.
You're also a great mum, because I've watched you and I've served you with your son Ethan.
we have curveballs in our lives as mums, don't we? And in life in general and business. So yeah, it's about tackling them head on, I think, and not putting our head in the sand and pretending otherwise. So yeah.
Wonderful. Let's bring Beck back in and see what she can pull out.
Excellent.
Honey, you're my sugar.
Okay, what's it going to be? First question.
The question is, Jacqui, what is your favourite piece of furniture?
Oh my goodness! What
I was not expecting that.
No, neither was I.
Well, you know what? When we moved into our house that we've just purchased in the last few months, I spent more money than I would normally on a piece of furniture, and it is a velvet green couch.
Ooh.
And it is, everyone comments on it, and it's not only does it look beautiful, but it's so comfortable to sit in. Yes. But we also, at the same time, we bought a cat. And the cat tends to like to scratch things. So whenever the cat... I've trained my dogs to bark at the cat, but so that's my favourite piece of furniture.
Yeah, the cat would love that velvet green lounge too.
Is it like an everyday piece of furniture, or is it a showpiece?
Well,
somewhere?
it was an everyday piece, but we've now moved it into our second living room, so it doesn't get sat on as often. Because I could see that it was going to become well used, and I didn't really want it to lose its nice newness too quickly.
Yes. See, a piece of furniture can tell a lot about a person, can't it?
Yeah.
What does it say to you then, Beck?
Oh, okay, velvet green. I'd say you've got a bit of creative flair going on there. Outside of the safe, a little bit on the edge, would I be right?
It's actually really interesting because it's not normally the piece of furniture that I would buy. It was outside of my comfort zone.
Right.
Normally I would buy something grey or brown, and I thought, no, I just love that. I have to have it. So I
need a splash of colour.
Yeah, exactly. A splash of colour. That's what it was.
I have a couple of velvet green chairs in my house.
Yes. Yeah, well...
Weren't my pick. I inherited them, but they go nicely, yeah.
I've got a velvet burgundy lounge or purpley lounge, and it's like a chaise. But
nice.
Yeah, they're nice.
I think everybody needs to have one unique piece of furniture in their home.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my favourite piece is my antique writing desk.
Oh,
you know the old ones you
beautiful.
pull the top down?
That is so quintessentially you, Rebecca.
Yes, it is. It's got all the little drawers and the leather top on it. And I love it.
You're right, though. Furniture does say a lot about people.
It does.
I also think the way people drive their car
Yes.
says a lot about them.
Sure does.
Well, what's your favourite piece of furniture?
Oh, now you've put me on it.
Double interview today.
I think it has to be my bed, because I always feel like your bed is so important, isn't it? And it's it's kind of like that little safe space. And
at the end of the day, it's like that's your, safe place that you can curl up and sleep
where
and
nobody
rest.
else is allowed to touch it.
Yeah.
Other than my husband, of course. But
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So we've established that you have a lovely green lounge, but you have 4 children.
Yes. I have had 4 children. So I have 3 children. Unfortunately, we lost our first child when he was 3 weeks old. So 2 boys and one girl. in the family, yeah.
Do you mind me going into how you lost your first child?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So Jacquelyn was born at 26 weeks premature.
Yeah.
I was first pregnant, 24 years old, never been through the process before, feeling fine, no signs of being unwell at all, really.
Yeah.
Except I went to work one particular day and a lady who I worked with said to me, "You look terrible. You need to go to the doctor." And I'm like, "Why? I've got a bit of a headache, but, I feel fine." But luckily enough that day I actually had an obstetrician appointment anyway. So I went to the obstetrician appointment and as soon as I walked in, he said, "Sit down, I need to take your blood pressure." And my blood pressure was 210 over 140.
Oh, wow.
And he was, "You're having this baby today. Your blood pressure is out of control," and so it was all of a sudden there was this mad rush, which I kind of didn't understand because I felt fine. And even to the point where he said, "Go and pack a bag, go straight back to the hospital." Well, I lived 45 minutes from from the city where I was living, and
because this is Tasmania, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yes. And so I went back home to the farm where I was living and packed my bag, and then about half an hour later, I got a phone call from the hospital saying, "Where are you? Why are you not here? We're waiting for you." And I'm like, "Oh, but I'm getting my bag," and there wasn't really because
so you were feeling kind of fine.
Yeah, and he just said to me, "Your blood pressure's really high," and even to that didn't mean anything to me at 24 years old.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went back to the hospital and things progressed pretty quickly and they did a scan and basically what had happened, I had severe preeclampsia and the baby's placenta was clotting. And so he had stopped getting blood supply to his organs, was focusing on the blood supply to his brain, which is an amazing thing that the body does.
Yeah.
And my kidneys had shut down. And I was close to having a stroke. So I went into an emergency cesarean. Don't really remember a lot of that whole process.
Yeah.
And then, he was delivered, went to the neonatal intensive care unit, and I went back into a ward. And the next thing I remember was a doctor coming to me and I'm going, "What's going on? And he said, "Don't paint the nursery yet." I clearly remember out of everything, that's what I remembered most strongly.
Wow.
And I'm like, "But can I see my baby?" And they're like, "No, you can't. You can't see him yet. We have to get you stable, blah, blah, blah." So time progressed and he weighed 800 grams. So he was tiny.
Yeah.
And
which is not much heavier than a block of butter, really.
No, he was really, and his skin was translucent, and you could, he was very small.
So even for 26 weeks, is that undersized?
Yeah. So apparently, he had been under stress for some time, but because I had it was a month between each doctor's visit, they hadn't picked up. My blood pressure had been okay the time before. There was no need for them to have any concern. If it hadn't have been, it would have been picked up at that point anyway. But the fact that my people in my life had said to me, you look awful.
Yeah.
And I look back at the photos now and I was so swollen and so bloated from the fluid retention because my kidneys weren't working that I'm just like, how did I not know I looked like that? So, it was pretty I guess
with your first pregnancy, you'd be thinking that was just part of pregnancy.
That's right. I had no idea. I had swollen ankles and fingers, couldn't get my rings off, all of those things. But I just thought that was pretty normal.
Yeah.
But Jacquelyn, spent a long time several weeks in NICU, and then one day this paediatrician came to me, and I was still in hospital all through this time. I was walking up and down the hallway to the intensive care unit every day. And he came to me and he said, "Your baby needs surgery. His bowel has got an obstruction and he needs to have a 10 centimetre section of his bowel removed."
Wow.
And I was like, how can he even have 10 centimetres of bowel, this tiny little baby? And I remember this doctor, he's passed away now, unfortunately. He was a lovely paediatrician, but his hands were bigger than Jacquelyn was,
Wow.
And anyway, so he had the surgery and he didn't wake up from the anaesthetic. He was unconscious for a long period of time. And one day on just my normal visit to the neonate intensive care unit, I arrived and the doors were shut. That's very, very rare. You know that something's going on when the doors are shut. So I sort of walked away and then a nurse saw me and she came out and she said, come in. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went in and they were doing CPR on Jacquelyn on a table in the corner. And they were giving him chest compressions and oxygen. And I just I remember panicking and I didn't know what to do. And I ran over to the window, which was facing onto the street, because my husband was coming up, and I could see him walking up the street, like, you know, strolling along while they're doing CPR on my 26-week-old baby.
Wow.
And I'm like, hurry up! You know, I just went into this panic. And anyway, he wandered in through the doors, and I remember running down and saying, he's going to die, he's going to die. And he's going, what are you talking about? Like, it was just so unexpected. We knew how unwell he was, and we knew that he had surgery, but we'd never really visioned that this would happen. And he walked in, and the doctors all came up to us and they said, we're keeping him alive for you to say goodbye. And I just said, I can't do it. I couldn't do it. I left. I couldn't, and I left my husband to do it. And so my husband then held him while they disconnected the machines, and he passed away in his arms. And I was out in the other room. I just couldn't face it. I was, I look at it back at it now, and if it had been any of my other children after having children, I absolutely would have done things differently. But at that time, that's how my body coped with the stress. And then I remember going in, and the doctor said, you know, they were sorry and all those things. And I said, what do we do now? And they said, you bury your baby. And so then we went through the process of, you know, funerals and all those things, and got dealing with the grief. And I never dealt with the grief. I never... it was one day after the funeral, and I hadn't cried, and my dad came up to me and he put his hands on my shoulders and he said, what is wrong with you? I have not seen you cry. And I remember getting angry at him, and I said to him, Dad, if I fall apart, everyone will fall apart. You know, like I was literally being the rock for everybody else.
Wow.
And in time passed, and I did grieve, and I went through really traumatic sort of, I guess, post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And still, actually, it was funny. I was not funny, but I was reflecting on my story recently, and I was writing it down, and I wrote what I've just explained to you down, and I became so emotional. And, you know, I can talk to you without getting upset, and I can talk to anyone who finds out about my story without getting, but when I was by myself and I was writing it down, it was a completely different story. And I came home, and my husband was like, what's wrong with you? And I went, I was like a mess. So, yeah, that's the story of Lachlan. My kids all know his story, and they know that they have a brother in heaven, and even my 6-year-old. So I have a 6-year-old daughter, and she often asks, you know, about what, as 6-year-olds do, they want to know all the details. You give as much as you can about, you know, about what happened.
So what was the gap then between Lachlan and Ethan?
Ethan was very shortly after. So Lachlan was born in July 2021, and Ethan was June 2001, and Ethan was June 2002.
Right.
So I fell pregnant as soon as the doctor said I could fall pregnant again.
Yeah.
And was there fear about this?
Absolutely. And it did happen again. Ethan was born 8 weeks early.
Right.
But for me, the getting through to that 26 weeks was the hardest thing, because the doctor had said if we'd just been able to get you another fortnight or another 3 weeks every week of the baby being inside you is so much more beneficial. So when I got to 26 weeks, I sort of went, you know.
Yeah.
Even if he's born now, I know I think things would be okay, you know, and then every other week was just that little bit better. And then all of a sudden, at 30 weeks, my blood pressure went up again. And the doctors, I pretty much lived in hospital for those weeks leading up to that once my blood pressure went up, because I was so nervous. And he was born at 34 weeks, so he was 6 weeks early.
Okay. And did you have that with the next two children as well?
Yeah. Well, I had it with Ryan as well, who's now 19. He was born 4 weeks early, again, blood pressure.
Yeah.
And then when I had Ellie, who's with my second husband, my husband, they were really nervous, because preeclampsia apparently is your body rejecting the husband's components that are inside of you, and so often that will result in a miscarriage. But with preeclampsia, you go much further in the pregnancy, and that's why you have all these sort of kind of reactions. So because I had a new partner and I'd had such severe reactions previously, they were really nervous. So I was watched very, very closely. Yeah. My blood pressure didn't go up one iota with my daughter. Wow. And I went right to 39 weeks with her. Wow. And the only reason she was early was because when Lachlan was born, he was still very high up in my tummy. Yeah. So they had to do a cross-sectioned C-section. Right. So I could never have a normal delivery after he was born. Right. I had to always have a cesarean. So she was fine.
Yeah, wow. It's incredible that you thought that you had to be the rock during that first the first baby dying. And do you know what was going on in your mind to make you think that you had to hold it together for everyone else? Because I think like you had every excuse to be the one to be cared for during that time, yet you felt like you had to hold it together to care for everyone else.
I think I've always just been a very strong person. Yeah. You know, I've had some trauma as a very young person in regards to I was stalked when I was quite young. Wow. And I just built up this sense of resilience, I think, from quite a young age, and also growing up as a kid in Hobart in the 70s with hardworking family. You know, it was just we were quite independent, and we just really needed to have that resilience, I think.
Yeah,
so
right. Can you talk to us about the stalking?
Yeah, gosh, another traumatic story. So I was, I'm the sort of person and still am that welcomes most people into my life, no matter what walks of life they come from. And there's this one particular student, I was in year 11, and this one particular student, he had a mental disability and not a lot of friends, and I would just always be friendly. You know, I'd say, oh, hi, how are you? And he kind of took that on himself that meant I don't know whether I was attracted to him or whatever he thought was happening there. But he started to follow me home, and I used to walk probably 3 or 4 kilometres from the school home each day, and there was a section of quite closed-in space, like park space, that I had to walk through. Yeah. And he would follow me, and it got to a point where I started to get frightened, and even to the point where I would walk with strangers. So if I would see someone walking ahead of me and I knew that he was behind me, I would like kind of run up to them and say, "Could I walk with you?" You know, and I had lots of friends that way. Because I just felt there was this threat to my safety. And then one day it was quite confronting, his activity. He was in a bush and I walked past, and his activity was like really, I don't want to go into the details, but it was he was exposing himself, etc. to me, and I ran. I was terrified, and I ran, and he chased after me. Yeah. And he caught up with me. I couldn't outrun him. And I could see the road in the distance, and I was even pretending there was someone there I knew. And I was waving to them. I'm going, "Hi, Dad, I'll be there in a minute. I'm coming." You know, there was no one there, but I just wanted him to think there was. Yes. Anyway, he caught up to me, and he said to me, "If you ever run away from me again, I'll track you down and I will rape you."
Oh my goodness.
And I went, oh wow. And I said, yeah, whatever. And like, because I was like 16 years old. Yeah. And I ran home. I had not told anybody about this up until this point. Yeah. Ran into home, told my grandmother was there, my 80-year-old grandmother was there having afternoon tea with my mum. I told them all what had happened. My dad then went to the school, spoke to the principal. He was pulled in and reprimanded, told not to go anywhere near me, otherwise the police would be involved. Yeah. And he didn't come near me ever again after that. Yeah. But unfortunately, about 8 weeks later, he raped another girl in the public toilets in that park.
Oh my goodness.
And I never knew what happened to him after that. I'm assuming he went to jail. I don't know. He was an older student. He'd repeated. Yes. Like he might have been 3 or 4 years older than me. Yeah. And then about 5 years after that, I was working in an office building, and my desk faced the front door, and this person just walked past.
Oh, no.
Like Just walk past the front door. But the stance, the way that they walked, the height, I jumped under my desk. I thought and he was a cleaner, and I kind of thought, I don't know what went through my head in that really short period of time, but in my brain, that was him and he was going to find me. And so I hid under my desk, and then I grabbed my phone off my desk and rang a friend up the corridor, and I said, you need to go out and see, he looks like this. And I wouldn't come out until I could be assured that he wasn't there.
Yeah, right.
It's those kind of things
it's
that
trauma.
That happen. It just built up and built up and built up. And I've probably never really addressed them with anybody. So all it's done is built these layers of self-protection in me. And I think that's why I dealt with Lachlan the way that I did, because I'd had these kind of things happen.
Yeah.
And I don't want my children to feel like that they need to be frightened of the world. And I'm not frightened of the world, but in saying that, I probably wouldn't run along the street alone unless I had my car keys in my hand. So I definitely do have a level of self-awareness and self-protection still from that particular incident.
Which is wise, isn't it? Like, you learn from what's happened in your experiences.
Yeah, that's right. But the likelihood of anything ever happening again is so slim. But it's, so...
Well, I mean, I haven't had those traumatic experiences, but when I run, I often... I'm very conscious about my environment and making sure my phone's always close to me. And, I think it's just the world we're living in as well, that to be aware that, these things can happen without living in fear.
Exactly.
Something happened just on Saturday night, and I was sitting in my car waiting for my daughter to come out of youth. And I made sure all my doors were locked, and then this shadowy figure came up and tried to open my passenger door. Oh, gosh. Started knocking on the window, and it was in an area that's known for carjacking. So I just put my car into drive and took off and did a loop. And this was just a couple of nights ago.
Goodness,
And then I told the youth leaders, and they said, this area is known for that. So they kept a really close eye on those kids coming out of youth that night.
It was lucky you had your door locked, because I do that and make sure that my door's locked.
But that night I double checked that the door was locked, so I just I don't know, just had a feeling.
Wow.
Isn't that strange?
So you want your children to live like that and be aware of their surroundings, but you don't want them to live in fear.
No, that's right. Know how to address those times if anything happened.
And my kids, they know a little bit about that stalking story, but they don't know, particularly the boys, because they're old enough to understand. But I haven't needed to have that conversation with my 6-year-old yet, but definitely will be wanting her to be able to keep herself safe. And
But I mean, your kids they're grown up. I know they've travelled, because Ethan's travelled with Dara, because our kids, Dara and Ethan, are good friends and have been.
I've heard of Ethan, so that's I was going to ask. How do you know each other?
Yeah, there you go. That's the connection. Yeah.
So we moved to Australia in 2011, and Jacqui moved from Tasmania to the Sunshine Coast in 2011, and both our kids went to the same school, and pretty much from like year 3, they've been friends and still connect now. Like, even though they've been out of school for a good number of years. Yep. Ethan's was over a few weeks ago.
Yeah, playing board games and whatnot. I think those boys that were all friends at school will always be friends, no matter where life takes them. They're just they're lucky to have each other.
They're very much so. I'm always very grateful for that little group of friends. I think there were 5 of them, and no matter where the world goes, they'll always connect.
Gravitate back to each other.
It's so special, isn't it?
Yeah.
They will go on to, knowing each other and touching base all through life, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So how old are all your kids now?
Yeah, so Ethan's 21.
Yeah.
Ryan is 19.
Yeah.
And Ellie is nearly 7.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so big gaps.
And you were saying before that you've won an award.
I did.
Yes.
So our business has won many awards, but I've never gone through the process of an award for me, and that was this one. So it was the Sunshine Coast Businesswomen's Network Awards, and I won the Sustainable Businesswoman of the Year.
Amazing. Yeah. So tell me about your business.
So I'm the CEO of ECOllaboration,
Yeah.
We're an environmental not-for-profit.
Yeah.
And we do a whole range of things, mainly around citizen science and community, connecting community to the environment.
Yeah.
And we do that through citizen science and environmental education.
Right.
But we also have a commercial arm which supports us. So we're not completely reliant on grant and government funding because we have a commercial part of our business.
Yeah.
And that's about environmental restoration and rehabilitation. So we do a lot of work with Sunshine Coast Council's largest natural areas contractor, and we look after all of their, some of their 200 of their natural reserves.
Right.
And so that part is where our money comes from to then be able to spend on the community and our citizen science projects. So we do platypus watch, frog monitoring, water quality monitoring, mangrove monitoring, a whole range of things that the community can be involved in.
Wow.
So Will was just telling me the other day that there are a whole group of platypus up at Mullaney somewhere.
There's platypus in the middle of Nambour. So our office is based in Nambour, so we do a lot of monitoring in Petrie Creek. Petrie Creek runs straight through the middle of town, but unknown to many, it's actually got this beautiful population of platypus.
Wow.
There's about, I think we've counted maybe a minimum of 9 individual platypus that live there.
Yes.
And most of them we see right outside the car wash.
Yeah.
So
Just for the context of international viewers,
yes,
who may not know what a platypus is, can you explain?
So the platypus, they thought originally they couldn't make out what kind of animal it was. But we now know a lot about them. And as I said, they're not an endangered species in Queensland. Other parts of Australia, there's all different types of levels of listing of when an animal is endangered. And Queensland, unfortunately, it's not. Not that it shouldn't probably be, but they're really hard to find. They're really hard to spot because they live in burrows in the riverbanks.
They're good at hiding, aren't
they? They are, and they eat the macroinvertebrates, so the water bugs on the bottom of the riverbed. So they're not often seen unless it's during mating season or when the babies are coming out, which is when we do our monitoring.
I think it's so funny that they like the car wash.
Well, they say that they don't, and there's probably a little bit of truth to it, that they don't actually always need clean water. They need clean water because they need food, and the food needs clean water, but they actually like to hide. So the turbid waters of Petrie Creek are really ideal for them.
Yeah.
But they are really, really severely impacted by urban sprawl, by the degradation of our waters, pollution. Unfortunately, there's a little platypus in Petrie Creek we've been monitoring that has a piece of fishing line wrapped around his tummy, quite tight, which is stopping him from diving. They're really hard to catch. So unfortunately, most of the platypus that do get entwined in fishing line do die, and they're often found dead. So we've been monitoring this little guy, hoping that we might be able to catch him, or someone we know might be able to catch him, but we haven't had any luck.
What is your main priority with ECOllaboration?
It's about awareness. It's about empowering people to feel as though they can make a difference. Sometimes we think that the problem's too big and that we can't make change, but we absolutely can. And once you've got a series of people, we have over 400 volunteers in our network, and that grows through word of mouth more than any other.
And what would a volunteer do?
So they can be involved in our platypus monitoring. They can come and do frog monitoring. So if they're really interested in animals and ecology, then those kind of citizen science projects are the most important. But we have a lot of other volunteers as well. We do river patrol, which is our river cleanup. So we have a boat in both the Maroochy and the Mooloola rivers. And we have a whole range of volunteers who go out almost every day and are pulling rubbish out of the creeks and rivers in the Sunshine Coast. Things from cow bodies, couches. You have no idea the rubbish that they find.
Are they green velvet couches?
Once they get a bit mouldy, they are. Do you get schools involved?
Yeah. So we have an environmental education team.
Yes.
And we have a qualified teacher who's on our crew, and he goes into schools ranging from the little ones all the way through to university level. Yeah. Because obviously it's unfortunately, it is easier to educate the young than it is to change the ideologies probably of the older parts of the population. And
you want to bring that next generation up to be looking after the environment too, don't
absolutely,
you?
Yeah. Children are the future, absolutely. And they love to learn with these hands-on experiences that we give them. We literally pull platypus food, which are water bugs, which are like dragonfly nymphs and all those things, which are really not that glamorous. But as soon as you tell them that they're platypus food, they're like, oh, wow. And, they want to sort through them and identify them with microscopes. And so that hands-on learning is just the best way to teach kids for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And so I guess the aim then is really for the next generation to take care of our waterways. Is that to be conscious of littering?
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem with Petrie Creek is a perfect example. Most of the people who are fishing in Petrie Creek are kids. And Nambour has a population of disengaged youth, often not at school. So even if we do go to the schools, which we do in Nambour on the surrounds, we're often not getting in contact with the kids who are leaving their fishing lines and their yabby traps in the creek. So the next question for us is, okay, so how do we reach these kids? So it's a never-ending problem, and ECOllaboration are very innovative in the way that we approach these kind of problems, and we're always looking for opportunities to, so at the moment we're thinking about doing a series of TikTok videos. Maybe that's the way to get their attention.
So Jacqui, what drove you into this line of work?
It kind of hinges on the Lachlan story. So when Lachlan passed away, I mentioned before, I had kind of this time in my life. So I was actually working for Qantas when Lockie died, and I went back to work after about 2 months off, and then 9/11 hit. And working for an airline during 9/11 was pretty stressful time to be working in the airline industry, and the fallout of that in regards to Ansett, our other major airline at the time, crashing, not literally crashing, but financially shutting up shop, all happened at the same time, and I needed to get out. So I left Qantas. I'd been working there for a very long time, and I decided just to go on a holiday. Actually came up here to the Sunshine Coast, and I went to Australia Zoo.
Yeah.
And I wandered around. I was by myself, wandered around, and it wasn't so much the impact of the animals and whatnot, but it was the impact of Steve. Steve was alive at the time. The impact of what he was doing in regards to conservation. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to have an impact on people to protect the planet. It just was like this epiphany. And so I had enrolled in a Bachelor of Environmental Science, majoring in aquatic ecology, before I'd even got back on the plane. It was just this really intense wave of like, this is what your purpose is. And that's what I did. And so I came back. I studied for 7 years while I had 2 young kids, because my other 2 boys were born by the time I'd sort of got into the momentum of study, and finished that degree. And that took me eventually back up here to the Sunshine Coast, where I got a job with the current business that I'm CEO of. Worked there for 5 years, and then moved into other things, and then came back as CEO 2 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, but if I had
big
never
shift.
Yes. If I'd never had that feeling of wanting to do something through Australia Zoo, and if I hadn't have been there because of my need to have some quiet time on my own after the death of Lachlan and 9/11 and all those things, then I probably wouldn't be here.
Amazing.
Passion is contagious, isn't it? Like Steve Irwin was so passionate about conservation, and I think that's what was intoxicating about. That's what draws you, is to see someone's passion, and
he was making a difference. And he still is.
Yeah.
And his family, of course, but the I said to you before about, we think that the problem's too big, but one person can really have a big impact on lots of other people, and you never know what those other people are going to do with their lives because of the influence that you've had on them.
Where do you see yourself going from here?
That's a big question, because I've won this award now, and I don't want time to go by in 12 months and go, damn, I wish I'd done something more with that. So we've got lots of things in the mix for the business. So I don't have any ownership of ECOllaboration. I'm the CEO, but I really love it. It's like my fifth child, and I don't see myself going anywhere, so I really want to take it on a journey. And we've just bought, the reason we originally started off as just a water watch group, so it was Marucci Water Watch, changed name in 2011 to ECOllaboration to be able to expand our footprint a little bit. And just in May this year, we bought a business based on the Gold Coast called The World As I Am. And that's now part of the ECOllaboration family. And so that's allowed us to do work at Brisbane, Logan, Lockyer Valley, Scenic Rem, Gold Coast. And that's the way that we're now spreading our wings a little bit. And we hope to do our citizen science programs and our other work down there too. But to answer your question, this next 12 months for us is about really using this award to further our business. And we're talking to different levels of government at the moment about trying to turn Nambour into a sustainable hub, into a sustainable precinct, somewhere that's known worldwide for its innovative thought around sustainability. So that's an exciting project that we're just humming away in the background on. We also are developing a local carbon catchment program. So we all travel on aircrafts. We tick the box that we want to donate our 50 cents to planting a tree, but do we know where that tree gets planted? No. Most of the trees probably aren't even being planted in this country. And so we're developing a really local carbon and biodiversity offsetting program with local businesses planting trees on local estate. So we are also developing that. So those two programs this year are on my to-do list, very high at the top of my to-do list.
Amazing.
Because they hinge perfectly on this award, and they have great impact and will do great things for the business, but also for the environment and our communities.
I love that.
Yes.
So I think we're probably ready for gold now.
We are, yes. Well, Jacqui, you have got such a beautiful, strong personality. You're a strong woman who's come through so much, but I can see that through every instance of life that you've had challenges, your strength has risen up, and you've been able to overcome that and almost take it on. Trying to find the right words for it. Basically, like with the stalking that you had, you just kind of looked it in the eye and just went, yeah, right, as if you're going to do that, and you dealt with it, and then you moved on, and then you had the death of your baby, and as painful as that was, you were able to, I guess, embrace every emotion that you went through with that, embrace what was happening, but also not let that defeat you, and go on to have 3 more beautiful babies and continue on with this strength that you have on the inside to go on and make a change to the world around you and to people. And I just see this culminating strength that just keeps going with you throughout your life, and you go from strength to strength. And I can see that even where you are now, you're just going to keep skyrocketing in strength. So good on you. You're very inspirational.
Yeah, thank you. It's been lovely to talk through it. It's not very often you get the chance to.
It's true.
Yeah, to talk from the beginning to the current day. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's like saying you're writing your story in a book. You've just done it in like half an hour. But then when you listen back, you think, was that really me? And wow, I have come through a lot, and I have fought through a lot of challenges. And
you've got a lot of courage.
And you think where you are now and who you are now is actually remarkable given what you've walked through. And, you know, as Beck said, it's just layer upon layer upon layer, strength upon strength upon strength, but without letting that ever restrict you, which is wonderful that you haven't done that, and for your kids as well. So congratulations on this award. It was very well deserved.
Yes, congratulations.
Thanks.
And we wish you all success for your plans for the coming year.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
Honey, you're my sugar.
It was so great having Jacqui on today, and I really enjoyed getting to meet her.
Yeah, you know, I've known Jacqui a long time.
Yeah.
Because our boys have grown up together. And it took me a long time before I even knew that there was a Lachlan, you know. You know, obviously you're building a relationship with somebody. And I remember her kind of touching on it, but it was years after I'd known her son, Ethan. And I was quite shocked, because it's not something that I would have picked up about her at all. That, you know, the loss of a child is probably one of the most difficult things to overcome in life, I think. The grief from that. And she doesn't, just not on her at all.
No, and I really appreciate that she talked to us so in depth about what happened during that time and her emotions, and stepped out what happened. Yeah, it was really
it was interesting
special.
That the fact that she talked about, you know, she wasn't emotional at all, like through the funeral and that, and she's one of these people that's very capable and copes and holds herself together. But that grief did come eventually, a number of years later, and she was able to process it then. And you know, and even now there's still waves of grief over that.
And I guess we see all of our guests, they go through so much, especially in the formative years. I mean, Jacqui was stalked as a young person, having to overcome that, just this strength of character that she has that has taken her through many difficult times in her life to bring her out to what she's doing now with her business. It's beautiful just seeing the strength that rises up in people through these times, isn't it?
It was funny that story she shared about where she thought she saw him again many, many years later.
Yes.
And the response that she got probably took her by surprise.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't know, do we? And something will just trigger it and we think, oh, okay, yeah, that's trauma from the past. That's still present, but you don't realise because you kind of just layer your life on top of it.
Yeah.
And can disguise it. So it's good that probably that trigger happened for her, because she's able then to process it and be more aware of the impact that's had on her life.
Yeah, that's right. And now, looking at the platypus.
She's an eco-warrior.
Yes. Is it platypus or platypi? I think platypi is the plural, isn't it?
Don't say anything with pie. I actually want to go search these platypus now. Have you ever seen one?
Yes, I have. I love how unusual they are. They're so Australian.
Do you know the weird thing was, this weekend, I was actually having a conversation with somebody about platypus.
Yeah, wow.
Because they'd been up to Mullaney and seen the platypus, and we all think these platypus are quite big, but they're actually small. They're almost hand-sized.
I think some of them are big, aren't they?
Well, I don't know. We should have asked her.
Yes, that's something everyone can look up. How big is the platypus?
Yeah, but I love the fact that she's building awareness around how important it is to clean up our waterways, to look after our ecosystems and that, because they're such a significant part to our world, our ecosystem, our humanity.
Yeah.
So I love the fact a lot of people are volunteering.
Yes.
And we didn't really touch on it too much.
And on the rivers and
cleaning up the rubbish.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid
pulling
at school.
out dead cows.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Probably get to milk my cow at the same time. It's on my bucket list.
As a kid though, being in school, and I loved it when we had people come in and teach us about how to look after animals and how to look after the environment and learning about the trees and shrubs. It's like, it's not agendaed, it's just looking after the world we live in, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it would be a great thing to volunteer for. So if that's you and you want to clean up the environment, go and check out ECOllaboration.
You might even find a dead cow in the water. Just wrench that thing out.
So that's it for today's podcast. You'll find us on all the major podcast platforms. The podcasts come out every Wednesday. We'd love to hear from you on our socials, the Gold Diggers Podcast. Tell us about your story so we can find the gold in you.
Easy as pie, lemon, apple or cherry. Loving you is so very sweet, sweet, sweet. How can it be such a piece of cake? And your smile is the icing. Loving you is a poem. Honey, you're my sugar. Boom, 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 boom.